The chill of October hung in the air like a ghostly whisper as I approached the old mansion, its decrepit facade barely visible through the thick mist that clung to the night. The invitation had arrived in an ominous black envelope, sealed with blood-red wax, an invitation to the most exclusive Halloween party in town. The rumors whispered of a night filled with spine-chilling thrills and macabre delights. I stepped through the creaking gate, the wrought iron squealing in protest, and made my way up the cobblestone path. The mansion loomed above, its windows' dark eyes peering into the darkness. The door swung open with a haunting groan, and I entered a dimly lit foyer adorned with cobwebs and dusty chandeliers. The air was thick with anticipation as I ascended the grand staircase, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the silence. The party seemed to pulse through the old house, drawing me deeper into its mysterious embrace. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the distant sound of eerie music filled the air. As I entered the ballroom, my eyes widened at the spectacle before me. The room was alive with grotesque figures in elaborate costumes, their faces hidden behind masks that seemed to mock the very essence of life. The atmosphere buzzed with nervous energy, and an uneasy excitement hung in the air. I mingled with the guests, each one more bizarre than the last. A skeletal jester, a faceless doll, and a figure draped in tattered rags that seemed to trail whispers of the grave. The conversations were hushed, filled with undertones of secrets and hidden agendas. The clock struck midnight and the room fell silent. A sudden chill swept through the air, extinguishing the candles in an ominous gust. The guests turned toward the center of the room, where a figure in a tattered cloak stood, its face concealed in darkness. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice echoed through the silence, sending shivers down my spine. "Welcome to the night of shadows, where the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest." The figure raised its hands and the room plunged into darkness. Whispers of fear swept through the crowd as the candles reignited, revealing a sight that froze my blood. The walls were adorned with portraits, each one depicting the guests in states of gruesome demise. A gasp rippled through the room as the realization sank in. These were not just costumes. The portraits seemed to come alive, the faces contorted in agony, and the once vibrant colors now painted in shades of decay. Panic set in as the guests tried to flee, but the door slammed shut, trapping us in this macabre nightmare. The figures in the portraits stepped out, their eyes fixed on us with an otherworldly hunger. The air grew heavy with the stench of death, and the once elegant ballroom transformed into a nightmarish carnival of the damned. I stumbled through the chaos, the air thick with the anguished wails of the trapped souls. The walls seemed to close in, and the portraits whispered curses that echoed in my mind. I turned a corner and found myself in a corridor lined with mirrors, each one reflecting a distorted version of myself. A ghastly figure emerged from the mirrors, a twisted reflection of my own fear. Its skeletal hand reached out and I felt a cold grip on my soul. The mirrors shattered, and the shards danced in the air, each one reflecting a fragment of my impending doom. Desperation clawed at my chest as I ran through the labyrinthine halls, pursued by the horrors unleashed upon us. The very fabric of reality seemed to unravel, and I questioned whether I had crossed into the realm of the supernatural. In a final, desperate attempt to escape, I stumbled upon a hidden door concealed behind a tapestry. The door opened to a forgotten chamber, adorned with ancient symbols and flickering candlelight. In the center of the room stood an ornate mirror, untouched by the malevolent forces that plagued the mansion. As I gazed into the mirror, my reflection wavered. The room behind me shifted and the air seemed to stabilize. With a surge of courage, I stepped through the mirror, leaving the nightmarish mansion behind. I found myself in the dilapidated foyer once again, the mist outside dissipating into the cold night. The mansion stood silent, its secrets buried within its decaying walls. The echoes of the night of shadows lingered, a haunting memory etched into the fabric of my soul. I stumbled away from the mansion, the weight of the horrors still clinging to me. The black envelope lay on the ground, a grim reminder of a Halloween party gone horribly wrong. As I walked into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows still whispered, and the boundary between the living and the dead was forever blurred.
The night was cold and damp, the kind of October evening that sends shivers down your spine even before the terror begins. The old mansion stood on the outskirts of town, its crumbling facade illuminated by the eerie glow of flickering jack-o'-lanterns. As I approached the grand entrance, the air seemed to thicken with an unspoken fear. I was invited to the Halloween party by a friend, enticed by the promise of a night filled with laughter, costumes, and spooky delights. Little did I know that the evening would become a descent into darkness, a nightmare that would haunt me for the rest of my days. As I entered the mansion, the creaking door closed behind me, shutting out the feeble light from the moonlit night. The flickering candles on the walls cast long dancing shadows that seemed to come alive with each step. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation, and nervous laughter echoed through the grand hall. The host, a mysterious figure in a tattered cloak, welcomed the guests with a chilling grin. I exchanged pleasantries with fellow partygoers, their costumes ranging from the whimsical to the downright macabre. A witch, a werewolf, and even a ghost floated among us, adding to the surreal ambiance. As the night progressed, the mansion seemed to come alive with spectral energy. Whispers echoed in the corridors and strange sounds reverberated through the halls. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over the gathering like a thick fog. The party moved from room to room, each decorated with sinister intent. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and dusty portraits of long-forgotten faces watched our every move. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper, making the once-opulent mansion feel like a decaying tomb. In one room, a fortune-teller offered to reveal our fates. Intrigued, I sat across from her, and her eyes, clouded by an otherworldly gaze, stared into the depths of my soul. She spoke in cryptic riddles, foretelling of a darkness that would soon envelop me. Unease settled in the pit of my stomach, but I dismissed it as a clever act. As midnight approached, the host gathered everyone in the grand hall for a séance. The air grew thick with anticipation as we formed a circle, clasping hands. The candles flickered wildly, casting dancing shadows that seemed to form grotesque shapes on the walls. The host, now draped in a cloak that seemed to absorb the very light around it, began to chant in a language unknown to us. The atmosphere tensed and a cold wind swept through the room. Whispers became audible, voices from beyond the veil of the living. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. Panic gripped the guests as we fumbled in the blackness, the only sound our frantic breaths. In the void, I felt a cold hand brush against mine, sending a shiver down my spine. The temperature dropped to an unbearable chill, and I could hear distant haunting laughter. Then, as swiftly as it vanished, the light returned. The candles flickered back to life, revealing a changed room. The grand hall now bore marks of decay, the opulence replaced by a sinister aura. The portraits on the walls leered with malevolence, and the once luxurious carpet was now threadbare and stained. The other guests and I exchanged bewildered glances, unsure if what we experienced was a shared hallucination or a twisted reality. The host, now standing at the center of the room, wore a grin that sent shivers down my spine. The fortune teller from earlier appeared, her eyes now glowing with an unnatural light. She spoke in a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the abyss, revealing that the séance had opened a portal to the other side. The barrier between the living and the dead had been breached, and malevolent spirits now roamed the mansion. Panic erupted among the guests as we realized the gravity of our situation. The once celebratory atmosphere turned into a desperate struggle for survival. The spectral entities manifested in various forms, their ghastly visages causing screams to echo through the halls. I fled through the corridors, pursued by unseen forces that whispered in tongues long forgotten. The mansion itself seemed to warp and twist, becoming a labyrinth designed to trap the unwary. Shadows danced on the walls, taking shapes that defied the laws of reality. As I stumbled through the darkness, the temperature plummeted, and a voice, neither human nor ghostly, whispered in my ear. It spoke of ancient curses and forgotten sins, promising a fate worse than death. Fear clung to me like a second skin, and I could feel the malevolent presence closing in. In a moment of sheer terror, I found myself back in the grand hall, the once familiar space now warped into a nightmarish tableau. The other guests, their faces contorted with fear, huddled together as the host revealed his true form. A being that seemed to exist between the realms of the living and the dead. The mansion groaned and shook as the spirits unleashed their wrath. The walls seemed to bleed, and the very foundation of the mansion trembled under the weight of supernatural fury. Desperation filled the air as the guests, once dressed in festive costumes, now faced a horror beyond their wildest nightmares. With a deafening roar, the mansion seemed to collapse upon itself and the world went black. When I awoke, I found myself outside the mansion, the cold dawn light banishing the darkness. The once grand structure now lay in ruins, a testament to the horrors that transpired within. I stumbled away from the wreckage, haunted by the memories of that fateful Halloween night. As I looked back one last time, I swore I saw the shadowy figure of the host in the ruins, his eyes gleaming with a malevolence that transcended the boundaries of the living and the dead. The mansion, now a twisted monument to the supernatural, stood as a grim reminder that some horrors are best left undisturbed.